I've never been the type to make a big deal out of birthdays. Growing up, they were more of a formality than a celebration. An obligatory cake, a few awkward family photos, and maybe a gift if my parents remembered it wasn't just that week in April. So when I turned 35 this year, I didn't expect fireworks. Honestly, I wouldn't have even cared if we skipped it entirely. But my younger sister, Melanie, insisted. She said it would be a fun little dinner, just family, low-key. Those were her words. She even offered to host it at her place, her newly renovated house with the backyard that she constantly reminded everyone I'd technically paid for. My name's Jordan, by the way. 35, single, no kids, and, as I've come to understand, unintentionally playing the role of financial safety net for my entire extended family. I work in tech, started coding in college, and landed a job at a growing cybersecurity firm. A few smart investments and promotions later, I'm now a senior systems architect, living pretty comfortably. I don't flaunt it. Never bought a Lamborghini or posted photos in front of yachts. But apparently, just the fact that I pay my bills on time and don't ask to borrow money puts me in the loaded uncle category at family gatherings. The birthday dinner was set for Saturday night. I showed up with a bottle of wine and one of those half-forced smiles you wear when you're walking into a room where half the people see you more as a bank than a brother. Melanie greeted me at the door, overly cheerful, wearing an apron like she was starring in a sitcom. "There he is," she beamed. "Birthday boy? Come in, everyone's here." Everyone meant the usual crew. My parents, both retired and content with pretending to be neutral in every family dispute. My older brother, Brian, who still hadn't paid me back for the emergency car loan from 3 years ago. His wife, Janine, who never spoke to me unless it was to brag about their kids or ask if I had any spare airline miles. And of course, Melanie's husband, Rick, who could barely maintain eye contact unless I was talking about taxes or investments. Then there were the kids, 4 nieces and nephews, ages ranging from toddler tantrum to preteen attitude, half of whom were glued to tablets I'd bought them last Christmas. Dinner was fine. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables. I made the usual small talk with my dad about baseball. Laughed at some recycled joke Brian told. Try not to check my phone every 3 minutes. But the whole time, there was this undercurrent, an unspoken expectation, like everyone was waiting for me to say something, give something, do something. And I couldn't quite shake it. Then came dessert. A homemade chocolate cake, courtesy of Melanie, complete with slightly off-center candles and a group rendition of Happy Birthday that felt more obligatory than festive. I smiled, made a wish I didn't believe in, and started slicing pieces for the kids. That's when it happened. My 12-year-old nephew, Mason, Brian's son, was sitting at the end of the table, fiddling with his phone. He wasn't even looking up when he muttered, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Uncle's just the family wallet. That's what Mom calls you." The room went dead silent. For a split second, no one moved. Then came the worst part, the laughter. Not awkward chuckles, not nervous giggles. Genuine, belly-deep laughter from Brian, Janine, even Melanie. My mother gave one of those half-hearted, "Oh, Mason," scolds that didn't mean anything. My father cleared his throat and went back to his coffee like it was a rerun he'd already seen. I stared at Mason, who still hadn't looked up, completely unfazed by what he'd just said. Janine was wiping tears from her eyes. "Kids say the funniest things, don't they?" she said between laughs, like it was a sitcom punchline. I didn't laugh. I didn't speak. I just smiled. That's it. A single, practiced smile I perfected over years of swallowing things I should have said. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and started tapping. Quietly, casually, while they passed around cake and continued their conversations like nothing had happened. Because in that moment, I realized something. They didn't see me. Not really. To them, I was a walking debit card with a sarcastic streak. The one who paid for dinner when Brian's card randomly declined. The one who funded Melanie's emergency bathroom renovation because Rick had lost hours at work. The one who let their parents stay on my cell phone plan just until the end of the year, 5 years ago. I wasn't Jordan. I was Uncle Amex. I sat through the rest of dessert in silence, occasionally nodding or pretending to scroll through photos. But I wasn't looking at pictures. I was logging into accounts, insurance, streaming services, phone plans, credit cards. All the little invisible threads I'd been holding up without even realizing how many there were. When dinner finally wrapped up, I stood, grabbed my coat, and thanked Melanie for hosting. I didn't make a speech. I didn't ask for an apology. I didn't even say goodbye. I just walked to the dining room table, set down a small box I'd brought in with the wine, and taped it shut with a single strip across the top. On the lid, I'd written 2 words in thick, black Sharpie. Figure it out. Then I walked out the door. No one followed me. No one stopped me. Maybe they thought I was being dramatic. Maybe they assumed I'd come around like I always did. But something had shifted. Something quiet, but permanent. Because the truth is, when people only see you for what you give them, they'll never stop taking. And for the first time in a very long time, I was done giving. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. No alarms, no messages, just that odd internal hum you get when something significant has shifted. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the hardwood floor, wondering if they'd noticed yet. If anyone had tried to call. If anyone even realized what I'd done. Part of me expected my phone to be blowing up. Part of me knew better. By the time I made coffee, there were still no messages. No missed calls. Just silence. It wasn't until mid-afternoon that the first ping came through. A text from Brian, short and sharp. Hey, Netflix is not working. Can you fix? I stared at it for a second, then locked my phone and walked away. An hour later, a group chat message from Melanie. Is the family plan down? Can't make calls. Then Rick chimed in with a face with rolling eyes emoji and a follow-up. Wi-Fi at my parents' isn't working either. Thought it was the router, but maybe it's the billing. There it was. The first cracks. Like they'd all hit the same wall at the same time and were now peeking around it, trying to figure out where the foundation had gone. Still, no one called me. Not to ask what happened. Not to check in. Just a string of complaints and passive-aggressive confusion. I ignored every message, turned my phone over, and let it buzz into the mattress. That night, around 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Melanie standing there, arms crossed, lips pursed like she was trying to keep herself from exploding. Her cheeks were red, not from the cold. You canceled the phone plan? She snapped. I stepped aside and gestured toward the couch. Come in. She didn't sit, just stood in the middle of my living room like a detective trying to find clues in a crime scene. This isn't funny, Jordan. Wasn't meant to be, I said. I walked back into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. You left without a word. You didn't even blow out your candles. You seem to be doing fine without me, I said, sipping slowly. Figured I'd leave you to it. She blinked. Look, Mason was just joking. He's 12. He doesn't know what he's saying. I raised an eyebrow. That's funny. Because he knew it well enough to quote his mom. Melanie's face twitched. A flinch. Brief, but telling. You're being petty, she said after a long pause. People rely on you, Jordan. You can't just pull the plug on everything without warning. Can't I? I leaned against the counter. Because I did. And the world didn't end. Your Wi-Fi did, sure. But the planet's still spinning. She was silent for a beat. Then, you've always been dramatic. That line, it landed heavier than she probably meant it to. I laughed once sharply. Right. I'm the dramatic one. Not the family that uses me like a walking trust fund. Not the mom who calls me the family wallet behind my back. We never said that, she said quickly. Mason did. He misunderstood. He quoted it, I said flatly. Verbatim. That shut her up. For a moment. You're overreacting, she tried again. We're family. Families help each other. That's just how it works. I set my glass down. Then help yourselves. She stared at me, stunned. Maybe for the first time, she realized I wasn't bluffing. That I wasn't going to roll over like I always had. Fine. She spat, grabbing her coat. You want to play martyr? Go ahead. Just don't expect anyone to come crying to you when they figure it out. And with that, she stormed out. But she was wrong about one thing. They were already crying. Just not to me. The following days were a cascade of chaos. First came Janine, calling from a different number, Brian's, probably, since hers had been cut off with the shared plan. I didn't pick up. Her voicemail was half complaint, half guilt trip. Jordan, this is getting ridiculous. You're punishing all of us for a stupid joke? The kids can't even watch their shows. Then came my mom. Sweetheart, your father and I can't access our prescriptions. The app won't let us in. I'm sure there's a paper option, I said, keeping my voice calm. But we're used to the app. Maybe ask Brian. He's good at figuring things out, right? A beat of silence. You've made your point, she said quietly. No, I said, I really haven't. I hung up before she could reply. And then it got personal. Brian showed up 2 days later. Not alone, he brought Mason. I didn't even open the screen door. Just stood there on the porch while Mason sat sulking in the passenger seat. You humiliated us, Brian said. Over a joke. No, Brian. Over a pattern. Over years of this exact crap. What pattern? Using me. Ignoring me. Mocking me when I'm not around, or when I am. Acting like my money is some kind of family inheritance that you're all entitled to. That's not true. You never paid me back for the car, I said. He paused. That was years ago. I thought we'd moved on. You thought I forgot. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I nodded. Exactly. He looked back at Mason, then lowered his voice. Look, just maybe don't take it out on the kids, all right? They didn't do anything. Mason did. He's 12, Jordan. And I was 35. Funny how the grown man has to forgive the kid, but no one even thinks about what that felt like. What it meant. Silence again. Mason still hadn't looked up. I left a box, I said finally. On the table. You all saw it. Brian nodded. That box had keys. A list of accounts I've closed. Passwords. Copies of the bills I was covering. All organized. I didn't just leave. I handed over the wheel. Brian was quiet. We didn't know. You never asked. He left without another word. Over the next week, the tone shifted. At first, it was outrage. How dare I cancel the car insurance? Why would I take the iPads off the data plan? Wasn't it cruel to leave the kids without Disney Plus? But then it became bargaining. Melanie texted me, asking if I'd consider just covering the phone plan until Rick's job stabilized. My dad left a voicemail saying, let's talk about a fair compromise. Brian emailed me, actual email, offering to start paying me back monthly if that would help smooth things over. But none of it was about me. None of it was about apology. It was just about plugging the hole. That's when the betrayal happened. I got a call from my bank. They flagged a series of login attempts from Brian's area, then a failed password reset. Someone had tried to guess my security questions. I called Brian. He didn't deny it. I just wanted to check something, he muttered. You tried to access my account. I figured if you were cutting us off, we deserved to know how much you were spending on us. I was speechless. You know, he continued, if you'd just told us what you needed, if you'd asked, we could have worked something out. You mean like you asked when you told your son I was the family wallet? That shut him up. You didn't want to work something out, I said coldly. You just wanted to make sure the ATM didn't dry up completely. He hung up on me. Later that night, I changed every password, froze my credit, moved my savings to a different bank, added two-factor to every login. It wasn't paranoia. It was clarity. They weren't just ungrateful. They were entitled. And I wasn't just walking away anymore. I was done being part of the problem. Because when someone shows you they'll drain you without hesitation, the only real mistake is leaving the tap running. And that's when the real plan started forming. Not just boundaries. Not just saying no. Something bigger. Something they wouldn't see coming. I didn't expect silence to be this loud. After everything fell apart, after I cut the cords and let my family feel the weight of their own responsibilities, I assumed there'd be a kind of relief. Like shedding a heavy coat in the middle of a sweltering summer day. But the truth is, even when you walk away from dysfunction, there's still a part of you that looks over your shoulder, wondering if you've made a mistake. The first few days after Brian's attempted hack, I kept waiting for something bigger. A confrontation. A guilt-tripping intervention. Maybe even one of those dramatic apologies you only see in movies, where the music swells and the long-lost brother finally sees the error of his ways. But no, what I got instead was absence. Total, echoing absence. They stopped texting, stopped calling. No more voicemails about insurance or login codes or the Hulu password. No more passive-aggressive emails about phone bills. Just nothing. And at first, it was peaceful. But then came the loneliness. Not the kind you feel when you're single or spending a weekend alone. This was different. It was the hollow ache that creeps in when you realize most of your relationships weren't really relationships at all. Just transactions. You give, they take. You offer, they expect. You say yes, they never ask why. And now that I'd stopped giving, the entire machine had ground to a halt. It was around that time I stopped sleeping well. Nights stretched long and heavy. I'd wake up at 2 a.m., heart pounding for no reason, brain spinning in circles. I'd lie there thinking about every holiday dinner where I paid the tab without hesitation. Every emergency Venmo request I fulfilled without question. Every time they looked surprised when I said no, as if my existence only made sense when it was convenient for them. One morning, I found myself scrolling old photos. Birthdays, graduations, little league games. I was in all of them, but always on the sidelines. Behind the camera, in the background, smiling, holding someone's purse, carrying the gift, writing the check. I realized I didn't remember the last time anyone had asked me how I was doing. That hit hard. I started skipping the gym, then stopped cooking, then the dishes piled up, then the laundry. My apartment became a kind of holding pattern, neat enough to function, but empty, like I was living in a hotel room between flights. Work was the only thing keeping me anchored. I threw myself into projects, took on extra shifts, volunteered for every presentation and code review. My boss noticed, said he liked my renewed focus. I almost laughed out loud. What he saw as focus was really just distraction, a way to avoid the fact that I felt discarded. But rock bottom isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. It's checking your phone and realizing no one texted you all weekend. It's hearing your coworker talk about their niece's recital and realizing you weren't invited to Mason's birthday party this year. It's walking past a family in the park and feeling like a stranger to the idea of unconditional love. One night, about 3 weeks after the dinner, I walked past my bathroom mirror and stopped. I don't know why. Maybe it was the angle, the light, the silence. But I looked at myself, really looked, and thought, who the hell are you right now? I looked tired, pale, like a guy who was waiting for someone to fix something. And for the first time, it hit me. No one's coming. No one was going to knock on my door with an apology. No one was going to unraise their kid to be cruel. No one was going to Venmo me back or send a thank you card or call just to check in. And if I kept waiting for that, I'd keep shrinking. So that night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened a blank notebook and wrote down a list of things that were mine. Not things I paid for, not things I gave away, things that belonged solely to me. The list was short at first. My job, my condo, my books, my Saturday mornings, my ability to walk away. But it grew. Over the next few days, I added more. My boundaries, my peace, my voice, my dignity, my name. Jordan, not Uncle Wallet, not the guy who always picks up the check, not Mr. Reliable, just Jordan. I started rebuilding slowly. I called up an old college friend I hadn't seen in years and asked if he wanted to grab a drink. We ended up talking for 3 hours, laughed until our sides hurt. He said I looked different, lighter. I dusted off my camera, the one I used to shoot landscapes before I started bringing it only to family events. I spent a Saturday morning at a nearby state park, just taking photos of trees, birds, the way the light hit the creek. No kids screaming, no one asking me to take a group picture, just nature and me. I joined a community class at the library, digital art, totally outside my comfort zone. The first few sessions, I barely spoke, just listened. Drew clumsy sketches on a tablet I bought myself as a gift. But by the 3rd week, I found myself staying after class to chat with the others, swapping book recommendations. Even got invited to a group dinner, no birthday required. I started cooking again, real meals, not microwave stuff or takeout. I found recipes online and spent Sundays trying to perfect them. There was something meditative about it, chopping, stirring, tasting, creating something that didn't need to be shared. I deleted the family group chat from my phone. Not muted, not archived, deleted. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I booked a trip, solo, 10 days in British Columbia. Hiking, photography, no itinerary. I used the vacation days I'd been stockpiling for years in case someone needed help. For once, that someone was me. The day before I left, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. It was from my mom. A short note. Jordan, we've been talking and we realized things got out of hand. Brian crossed a line. So did Melanie. Maybe we all did. It's not the same without you. We miss you. Please call. Love. Mom. I read it twice. Then a 3rd time. And I didn't feel what I thought I would. I didn't feel vindicated. Or angry. Or warm. I felt still. Because the letter wasn't an apology. It was an invitation to come back into the system. To resume my role. Patch things up. Be the glue. But I wasn't glue anymore. I was a person. And people don't belong to anyone. Not even family. So I packed my bag, printed my boarding pass, and left the note on my kitchen counter. No reply. That trip changed me. I hiked trails with strangers who became friends by the 2nd mile. I shared stories over campfires. I fell asleep to the sound of wind in pine trees instead of the buzz of guilt on my phone. And somewhere on day 6, standing on a rocky overlook with the sun warming my back, I thought, this is what it means to live for yourself. Not selfishly, but freely, with no strings attached, no box left on the table, just me. And that's when I knew I wasn't going back. Not to the role, not to the pattern, not to the silence that only came when I was useful. I was done being the family wallet. Now, I was just Jordan, and that was more than enough. But that doesn't mean the story ends here. Because while I was rebuilding, they were unraveling. And eventually, they did something so audacious, so calculated, so entitled. It pushed everything over the edge. When I got back from British Columbia, I was a different man. Not in the cheesy self-help book way. Not in the I found myself Instagram story sense either. Just quieter, stronger, more grounded. I'd spent 10 days in places with no cell service and no expectations. No one demanding, no one draining. Just fresh air, early mornings, and silence. I came back with dirt still under my fingernails and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I didn't go home right away. I stopped by my office first. My manager, Greg, took one look at me and said, "You look like you actually slept." "I did," I said, smiling. "For once." He chuckled, but I could tell he meant what he said. Even my coworkers noticed. I was calmer, sharper, present. That first week back, I crushed 2 projects, reorganized a lagging team's deployment schedule, and even stepped in to fix a client-side encryption bug no one else wanted to touch. That's when Greg pulled me into his office. "Jordan," he said, "I've been meaning to talk to you about something." I raised an eyebrow. "There's a senior advisory position opening up," he said. "More oversight, fewer hours in the trenches. It's mostly strategy and infrastructure planning. A real leadership role." I blinked. "Are you offering it to me?" "I'm offering you the chance to apply," he said with a smile. "But let's just say, your name came up first. Everyone trusts you. You're the guy who gets it done." That landed hard. I'm the guy who gets it done. Not because I'm an ATM. Not because I'm convenient. But because I earned it. I shook his hand and left his office with a strange mixture of pride and disbelief swelling in my chest. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was being used. I felt seen. But then I checked my phone. A missed call from Melanie. 2 from my mom. A voicemail from Brian. And a single text message, sitting there like a landmine. "We need to talk. It's about the house." I froze. The house. There was only one house they could mean. My parents' old vacation cabin. The one I bought out of foreclosure 5 years ago when they were about to lose it to back taxes. The one I paid to renovate. The one that legally belonged to me, but that I let them keep using as a family place because I was too soft to draw boundaries at the time. It had always been unspoken. I'd saved it, they'd enjoy it, but I held the title. And now, clearly, something was going on. I called my lawyer. "Hey, Nina," I said. "Random question. You still have the title paperwork from the Cedar Creek property?" "Of course," she said. "You want me to send it over?" "Yes. And can you do a quick title search? I want to make sure no one's tried to move anything without me." There was a long pause. "Jordan, are you worried someone forged something?" "I'm not sure," I said carefully. "But I don't want to find out the hard way." "Got it," she said. "Give me a day." I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. The house had always been the one physical thing tying me back to them. Every summer barbecue, every Thanksgiving weekend, every cousin sleepover, it all happened there. They treated it like it was communal, like it had never legally changed hands. But I knew how they thought. If they wanted to make a power move, it would be there. That night, I drove to the cabin. It was late, past 10 p.m., and I didn't text anyone ahead of time. I pulled up the gravel drive in silence. The lights were on. There were 2 unfamiliar cars in the driveway. I parked on the edge of the property and got out quietly. The moment I stepped onto the porch, I heard them. Inside. Talking. Laughing. My siblings. "Jordan's never here anyway," Melanie was saying. "It just sits empty. He's practically abandoned it." "Exactly," Brian said. "We're the ones who actually use it. He wouldn't even notice if we took over the deed." My heart thudded in my chest. "He's changed," Rick added. "Ever since that stupid birthday dinner. It's like he thinks he's better than us." "Let's just get the paperwork ready," Brian said. "If he doesn't sign, we'll say it's for maintenance or taxes or something. Slip it into a stack. He won't even look." That's when I stepped inside. The silence was instant. Her head snapped toward me. Melanie's eyes widened. Rick turned pale. Brian's jaw locked. Janine, because of course Janine was there too, tried to look neutral. Hey, I said casually, like I hadn't just heard them plotting to rob me blind. Cozy night. No one answered. I was just in the neighborhood, I added. Thought I'd check on the property I own. Melanie recovered first. Jordan, it's not what it sounds like. Oh, it's exactly what it sounds like, I said, pulling out my phone. Want to hear the recording? Their faces drained. I hadn't recorded anything, but they didn't know that. You were going to trick me into signing away the house. It's not like that, Brian started. It's exactly like that, I snapped. You just said it yourselves. You thought I wouldn't notice. That I don't deserve it. That I abandoned it. I stepped forward and pointed to the window. See that security camera I installed last year? Still active. Still backed up to the cloud. Their eyes followed my finger. Panic started to bloom. So let me be very clear, I said, voice cold. This cabin is mine. It's in my name. I paid the back taxes. I renovated the roof. I fixed the plumbing. I replaced the windows. And now I'm going to secure it, because this... I gestured at them. This is trespassing. Janine tried to speak, but I raised a hand. Nope. Save it. You can leave. Right now? Or I call the police. Melanie looked like she might cry. Brian opened his mouth to argue. I'm serious, I said. One word. And you're all explaining this to a sheriff. They left. Slowly. Begrudgingly. Muttering under their breath. But they left. And when the last taillight disappeared down the driveway, I sat down on the couch and didn't move for an hour. Not because I was angry, but because something had finally clicked. This wasn't about petty family drama anymore. This was about entitlement. About people so used to taking that they saw ownership as optional, that they genuinely believed they could outmaneuver me with manipulation and a forged signature. And I'd just given them their warning shot. Now it was time for the plan. I spent the next week putting it into motion. First, I contacted Nina again. Told her what I'd heard, what I suspected. She immediately filed a notice of interest on the property, which would flag any unauthorized attempts to transfer the title. We updated all the security documents and listed the cabin as a high-risk asset. Second, I installed an entirely new security system, smart locks, motion detectors, remote cameras. Everything routed through my private server. I even hired a local property manager to check on the cabin weekly and act as a legal witness if anything shady went down again. Third, I started gathering documents. Years of receipts, texts, emails, payment logs, proof that I'd been subsidizing the entire family's lives for the better part of a decade. Not to wave it in their faces, but to build a case. Because I knew now, it wasn't just about cutting them off. It was about protecting myself from them. And then came the final piece. A trust. I'd been meaning to set one up anyway. But this time, I made it airtight. My assets would be distributed not to individuals, but to causes I believed in. Education, mental health, local charities. Not a dime would go to people who saw me as nothing more than a wallet. But I didn't tell them any of this. Not yet. Because I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was preparing to make a point. One they'd never forget. 2 months passed. 2 long, quiet, oddly satisfying months. I didn't block them. I didn't chase them. I just stopped replying. And they noticed. At first, I saw it in little ways. Passive-aggressive Facebook posts about family who think money makes them better, vague jabs about brothers who forget where they come from. Melanie even posted a picture of the cabin's porch with the caption, "Too bad some people think love has a price tag." Cute. They were trying to paint me as the villain. The cold-hearted brother who abandoned them, who hoarded wealth while his family struggled. The guy who walked away from tradition, who forgot what it means to be family. But they didn't know what was coming. Because revenge isn't about getting even. It's about changing the rules of the game so completely, they realized they never even understood what you were playing. And I was about to flip the board. It started with an invitation. I sent it by mail, old-fashioned, handwritten, just formal enough to sting. A simple card. Asterisk, you are cordially invited to a family brunch at Cedar Creek Cabin. Saturday at noon. Dress casual. Bring nothing. Jordan, asterisk. No explanations. No agenda. Just enough to pique their curiosity. I knew they'd come. They were too nosy not to. At exactly 12:07 p.m., Brian's SUV pulled into the gravel driveway, followed by Melanie's Subaru. Rick and Janine got out next. My parents arrived last, trailing behind like they didn't want to be seen with any of them. They stepped onto the porch hesitantly, like the floor might collapse under them. I opened the door with a polite smile. Glad you could make it. They exchanged glances, unsure of the tone. Unsure of me. The table was already set. Bagels, fresh fruit, quiche, real coffee. I even lit a candle. If I was going to make a point, it was going to smell like cinnamon and look like a Martha Stewart spread. They sat down slowly. My dad cleared his throat. Thanks for the invitation, son. I nodded. Thanks for coming. Melanie looked around, clearly suspicious. What's this about? Brunch, I said, and a little closure. They tensed. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't deliver some dramatic monologue. I just stood at the head of the table and handed out folders, one for each of them. Inside was documentation, receipts, bank statements, payment logs, proof, pages and pages of everything I'd paid for over the years. Car repairs, dental bills, camp registrations, cell phone plans, streaming services, vet appointments, even the furnace Melanie replaced without telling me. At the end of each folder was a single number, the total amount each person owed me, to the dollar. Brian, $28,463.17. Melanie, $41,209.58. Janine and Rick, $11,382.90. My parents, $9,710.33. I let them flip through the pages. They grew quieter with every line. Mason wasn't there this time. Neither were any of the other kids. It was just us adults now. Just the people who had looked me in the eye while using my kindness like a debit card with no PIN. You kept track? Brian asked, eyes narrowed. No, I said calmly. I reconstructed it. Took a few weeks. Luckily, banks are good at records. This is insane, Janine muttered. You're asking us to pay you back? No, I said. I'm telling you the truth. This is what I carried. Quietly. For years. But family doesn't keep score, Melanie said, voice shaking. I looked her dead in the eye. Family doesn't exploit. Silence. I let it sit. Then I continued. I'm not here to demand repayment. I don't expect a dime from any of you. They blinked. Confused. Then what is this? Brian snapped. Some kind of guilt trip? No, I said. It's a mirror. I walked over to the fireplace and pulled out a thick envelope. This, I said, holding it up, is the final deed to the cabin. Transferred last week to the Cedar Creek Conservation Trust. They stared at me like I'd just spoken in another language. What? Rick asked. I donated it, I said. The land, the house, everything. It'll be used for environmental research and local events. It's now protected land. No private ownership. No more summer BBQs. No more holiday weekends. It's over. Melanie stood up. You can't do that. I could, I said. And I did. Because it was mine. And I decided to do something meaningful with it. My mom finally spoke. Jordan, why? I turned to her. Because I want peace. And because letting any of you keep using it would be like handing the keys to a house I no longer recognize. Her lips trembled. But she didn't speak again. I wasn't done. There's one more thing. I handed out the final document, an addendum to my new trust. It read, upon my death, none of my estate will be distributed to any member of my immediate family. Instead, all assets will be donated to nonprofit organizations focused on education, technology access, and mental health services. Brian's face turned red. You're cutting us out. No, I said. I'm choosing to give to people who haven't mocked me, manipulated me, or tried to steal from me. Janine scoffed. You're going to die alone. I smiled. No, I'm going to live freely. They didn't eat much after that. The food just sat there, cooling in the silence. Eventually, one by one, they stood. No apologies. No tears. Just angry, stunned silence. They left the way they came. Entitled. Empty-handed. And finally, powerless. I stood on the porch and watched them go. Felt the breeze pass through the trees one last time. Then I locked the cabin door behind me, for the final time, and handed the keys to the property manager waiting by his truck. All yours, I said. They won't be back. He smiled and drove off. And just like that, I walked away. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. They had always believed I was the family wallet. But now they knew the truth. I was the one who built the vault. And I was the only one who knew how to close it.